Unfortunately, I've seemed to have misplaced my degree at some point. So, guess we'll have to get a new one. I think it's even better than the original. Of course. Oh, shit. Punch the wall a little. Hello, listeners. My name is yet again Dr. Kevorkian, and welcome back yet again to the Doc Talk. I am a doctor, and you can still trust me. Alrighty. Today we have a few things in the agenda. First, we got to respond to some questions from you, my dear listeners. Then, we got some footage of one of my personal clients weighing in on his opinion on Franz Kafka's work. And then, we're going to come to some brand new stuff for you listeners. Alright, so it seems we first have a question from our local banana man. He asks, what is the legacy of Kafka's Metamorphosis, and how did it define Kafkaesque as we know it today? Mr. Banana Man asks, what is the legacy of Kafka's Metamorphosis, and how did it define Kafkaesque as we know it today? Well, Jude, Kafka's report of the Metamorphosis is pretty interesting. It goes over themes of absurdism, depression, alienation, isolation, all of those in a tight package. And that tight package can be related to many people experiencing something that could be similar. This is what gives it such a notable legacy. Okay, here's our second question. Comes from my own personal client, Diane Bryan. He wants to know about how Kafka's character Gregor could be a self-insert, perchance. Well, Brian, Gregor could be a self-insert by Kafka's own personal alienation from society due to his announcement of him being atheist and being Jewish. He had his own personal parental struggles, much like Gregor did, and his health and physical fragility were very important parts of his life, just like how Gregor's transformation made him physically fragile, and how his health was also in decline. And for our third and final question, listeners, comes from Naomi, who asks, what aspects of the book were my favorite? So, what I believe was probably the best part of the book was when Gregor's father, in a rage, chucks an apple as hard as he can at Gregor's face. He, of course, misses his face and hits him in the back. This is really important to me because it kind of shows off the raw power, like his father had, his rage at his son who's, just not being useful anymore. And honestly, I'd do the same. If he's not pulling his weight, he's got to go. Alright, we're on to part 2. Today we're going to be talking about the characters in the report of Kafka. So we seem to have two types, dynamic and static. The two main dynamic characters I'm going to talk about are Gregor and his sister, and the static ones are his father and his mother. The reason Gregor and his sister are dynamic is because they seem to go through their own changes in the story. Gregor's is pretty obvious as he transforms into a bug, and his life just, kind of slowly goes downhill from there. His sister, on the other hand, she starts the story in kind of an optimistic sort of way. She's excited about finding out what kind of foods he likes. She wants to clean the room and help as much as she can. But as time goes by, she becomes more apathetic to his cause, and eventually, she does the bare minimum. Doesn't even want to be in the same room as him anymore. The two static characters I chose were Gregor's father and his mother. The reason I chose Gregor's father is because he stays pretty static through the story as a static character. He starts off the story by hating Gregor in his bug form, and he ends the story hating Gregor in his bug form. In fact, he's the one who kind of lands the killing blow on him with the apple and the final shutting of the door to Gregor's room. He chose Gregor's mother for similar reasons to his father. At the beginning of the story, she's terrified of him as a bug, despite, really, at her heart, kind of caring, as she really wants to see him. And towards the end, she still also loves her son, but she's still, of course, terrified of him because he's a giant bug. And that's what makes her a static character, along with his father. Alright, the reason I believe that Kafka chose to write the mother and father as static characters and Gregor and his sister as more dynamic characters is to kind of show off how the different reactions of illnesses other people feel. So, of course, for his father and mother, they're meant to represent the people who don't view a change. They can't change their minds. They think it's bad from the start, think it's bad from the beginning. For Gregor's sister, she changes, and for Gregor's sister, the reason that she kind of stays dynamic and changing her opinion throughout the story is to show off the type of people who change their opinion on mental health as it goes on. For Gregor's sister specifically, her opinion changes from "we can beat this" to "it's so over" by the end of the story. So anyway, enough about Brian. Now we're going to be discussing the point of view of the story. Kafka seems to put himself inside of, Gregor's point of view. He writes it as if he was Gregor himself. It affects the experience of the report to the reader by, making you feel what Gregor could have been feeling at that moment. This could be, as Brian said, a self-insert moment for Kafka. Well, listeners, that's all the time I have for today. Remember, I'm still a doctor. And you can still trust me.